You've built a successful business. On paper, you're crushing it. But every time you sit down to work, you get distracted. You feel scattered. Priorities are not clear. You don't know what you should be working on. And you end up thinking if all of this actually makes any sense. You start even feeling empty inside. People are telling you that you may have ADHD. But what if they're wrong? What if you're not chemically broken, but spiritually bankrupt? In this video, I'll prove you that you don't need meds. You need meaning. Let me tell you something that might be uncomfortable to hear. ADHD has now become a socially acceptable way of saying, I don't know who I am, what I stand for, and why I do what I do. Now, before I go any further, ADHD is a real, legitimate condition that affects millions of people. But for every genuine case, there are countless others who mistake their spiritual emptiness for a chemical imbalance. The symptoms actually look remarkably similar. Chronic distraction and inability to focus, a gnawing sense of emptiness, constant seeking of a stimulation just to feel alive, and that feeling that something fundamental is missing. But the root causes and the solutions could not be more different. Here's where it gets dangerous. If you label yourself as ADHD, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that scattered mind that you're cultivating ends up becoming who you are. Distractions end up being your new normal, and avoidance ends up becoming your condition. What started as a temporary drift calcifies into a permanent identity. The real cost is years of your life spent fixing the wrong problem. Because every day that passes, you drift further away from your authentic path. Let's break this down and tell you exactly how to solve it. Last year, I was working with a guy who was doing 10K a month, and in his own words, he couldn't stick to anything. He was making decent money, right? Don't get me wrong, he was traveling around 10K a month, but his days were filled with endless stimulus, shallow tasks, chasing novelty, jumping from idea to idea, trying to start 4 businesses in a row, even if his own business was making 10K a month, which I believe was nothing compared to the guy's potential. In other words, the guy was drowning in a storm of his own making. And as a result, he had a chaotic mind, an exhausted body, and a calendar full of fluff. At some point, he told me, I think I have ADHD. What he really had is a lack of our inner compass. To get him out of the way, we did not give him productivity hacks. I did not tell him to time block. I did not tell him to wake up at 5 a.m., build a second brain, a live operating system, or any of that bullshit. We rebuilt his identity at the core, which meant unearthing his true mission, then clarifying the beliefs and behaviors needed to achieve that mission, and then shaping his environment to support that mission, not sabotage it. Within a month, he was doing 6 hours of deep work every single day. The transformation was not about any technique. It was about finding his why. Most people believe spirituality is about meditation and mantras, but spirituality is a more straightforward and practical than that. It involves a deep alignment between who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche put it best: he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. One of the most fundamental things you'll ever do is to actually find that why. Most entrepreneurs dismiss it as soft or woo-woo. They focus on tactics, on hustle, wondering why motivation fails and discipline is such a struggle. But elite performers know best. They understand that clear purpose is the rocket fuel for a life well lived. Once you are clear on who you are and what you do, your identity shifts from I'm in business to make money to I am on a mission. And that mission could be making a dent in the universe like Steve Jobs, or creating wealth for your family, or living life on your own terms and traveling around. The size of the mission does not matter. What matters is that it means something to you, because meaning kills resistance, and a meaningful identity becomes the best fuel for success. Let me tell you exactly how this works in practice. When you have a clear identity, you set boundaries. For instance, you could tell you, I am an elite performer, so I don't check social media between deep work. You also create behavioral defaults. You may say, of course I'm working today, that is what elite performers do. And you remove options like I do not quit, because elite performers never quit. When your identity is weak, every decision requires willpower. Every distraction becomes important. Every setback feels personal. But when your identity is strong, decisions become automatic, distractions become invisible, and setbacks and failures that used to trip you up just become data. The difference is identity, is how you rewire your mind to create the right beliefs and behavior. That brings me to a very important concept that is at the core of our methodology, neuroplasticity. Dr. Messernick's research told us 20 years ago that our brains physically recognize our reality based on our repeated behaviors and thought patterns. So when you adopt a strong identity, you're reshaping your neural pathways to support the beliefs and behaviors that support that identity. Let me give you a real example. So another client who came to me, he was running a successful marketing agency, but he was constantly battling procrastination. He tried every system imaginable. Notion, operating systems, Pomodoro, all that stuff. But the breakthrough, the thing that actually helped him, was when he stopped seeing himself as a hardworking but permanently distracted entrepreneur and started identifying with being a business athlete. That shift wasn't just semantic, it was neurological, because his brain began reinforcing the specific beliefs and behavior that supported his new identity, making focus work natural. He started taking his sleep routine seriously. He started adopting our self-mastered way of working. He started performing in business like an elite athlete. Guess what happened? His business took off. Most founders like you do not need Adderall. You need an identity powerful enough that pulls you forward and drowns out the noise. How do you know you have a strong identity? How do you know you're working on the right thing? How do you know you truly align with what you're meant to be doing? First, you avoid shiny objects and work precisely on what matters. Two, you don't need motivation or external validation. The work is justified by itself, is intrinsically rewarding. You stop thinking in days and start thinking in decades. You stop chasing hacks and start chasing mastery. You don't dread psychological resistance. You welcome it as a sign of growth. You stop chasing bullshit and you stop escaping every time things uncomfortable. When you do work that is rooted in your identity, you're in spiritual alignment, which sustained guarantees elite performance and eventual success. And this is just not philosophical theory. This is literally backed by research in performance psychology. In fact, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is the godfather of flow, proved that meaning and purpose are directly related to flow state, which is the state of effortless concentration in which the brain is aligned with the task and we can summon our best behavior. If you're resonating with this and you feel a disconnect between what you're doing and who you truly are, you're not alone. Everybody is out of alignment these days because everybody is not training their mind to actually perform. That's why I created Selfmastered. That's why we consistently help people get out of this rut and consistently execute. And if you think you need help, book a decoding session with us. If we can help you, we will tell you. To sum up, ADHD is not your enemy. Lack of spiritual depth and alignment is. If part of you knows this is true, then it is time to stop pretending that you need another system, hack, or bullshit operating system. You need to reclaim the version of you who never required hacks in the first place. You must rebuild your identity, rewire your focus, and restructure your execution. That is how you go from spiritual bankruptcy to peak performance. Not by adding more things to the plate, but by getting clear on who you are, what you do, and why is that important. The question is not whether you can focus. The question is what mission is important enough for you to make elite levels of focus every single day inevitable. If you want our help to unearth this purpose and really get you to peak performance in about 6 weeks, book your decoding call below. Chat soon.